So I'm going to share with you in this video my exact pre-exam protocol that I use pretty much before every single exam, right? So I've been doing exams for the past 10 years. I've done a ton of them, right? So I'm going to share with you some kind of unconventional things that I do, stuff that I haven't really heard going around the internet, right? Of my pre-exam, ritual, the things I do before my exam. So I'm not going to tell you the usual stuff that you already know, right? You probably already know, like, oh, get a good night of sleep, or like, study your notes the night before, or like, eat a good diet the day of the exam. I'm not going to tell you all the usual stuff that you already know. I'm going to give you some kind of like unconventional tips, unconventional hacks, maybe some controversial ones as well. So listen closely, okay? So the first tip I'm going to give you is related to sleep. So you've already heard the advice like, oh, get a good night of sleep the night before the exam, right? I think that's pretty good advice. Like, yeah, if you get a good night of sleep, your mood's going to be better, your energy's going to be better, you're going to feel better going into the exam, right? 100% get a good night of sleep. But here's the thing. I believe that sleep, when it comes to exams, is overrated. Okay? Listen to this. This is going to be a bit controversial, but this is my opinion. Basically, when you're like preparing for exams, you're in the exam period, 100% get sleep. Sleep is needed to form your memories, consolidate your memories, 100% get sleep. But here's the thing. If the night before the exam, you don't get a full night of sleep, right? Let's say you only get 5 hours of sleep, 4 hours of sleep. It's not as bad as you might think it is. Because this happens to me all the time. I'll get a bad night of sleep the night before the exam, but I will go into the exam and my body will just pump me full of adrenaline, pump me full of energy. Because that's the thing. When you go into the exam, it's like a high stakes, stressful environment. So your body will pump you full of energy, full of adrenaline, right? Your body is designed to perform really well even when you're sleep deprived for 1 night or 2 nights, right? Like, I want you to imagine when humans used to live in hunter-gatherer societies, right? When we used to live in tribes of like 200, 300 people, right? Imagine the whole tribe has been sleeping for 3 hours and then an enemy tribe attacks and everyone has to wake up and fight back, right? Do you think they've only gotten 3 hours of sleep? Do you think their bodies are gonna go like,
oh man, we've only slept for 3 hours, we can't fight these guys, let's go back to sleep, let's chill?
No. Even though they've only gotten 3 hours of sleep, the enemy tribe is attacking, their bodies are gonna get hyped. Their bodies are gonna fight back with full energy, use all their resources. So that's the thing, the human body is designed to actually be able to perform really well and get really high energy, really hyped, even when you're tired. And that's basically what an exam is. An exam is basically a modern day tribal invasion. So I realized that when you go into an exam, you actually get really hyped. You actually get a lot of energy. Like, I remember this one time. So it's my high level physics exam, right? In high school, right? Final exams. I'm about to do 6 hours of physics exams, 2 papers back to back. And the night before the exam, I make the biggest mistake of my entire life. So it's the night before the exam, 9 p.m., and I'm doing some last minute study. I make the mistake of drinking a cup of coffee at 9 p.m. So I do my 2 hours of study and then I go to sleep around midnight, right? But there's still caffeine flowing through my veins. So I'm lying there at midnight, eyes wide open, unable to sleep. Because at this point, I'm like 18 years old. I'm pretty new to caffeine. I didn't know that caffeine would keep you up at night. So I'm lying there at midnight, unable to sleep the night before my exam, and I end up staying up all night. I hear the birds singing at 6 a.m. I see the sun rising. I end up getting, I think, 2 hours of sleep before my 6 hours of physics exams. And I still end up doing the best in the entire class. Now, I'm not saying I'm some kind of genius. This is not what I'm trying to prove here. What I'm trying to say is that sleep is not as essential as you might think it is when it comes to exams, right? So don't stress too much about not getting a big night of sleep. Here's another reason why. I'm sure you realize that that when you need to get a good night of sleep, when you need to sleep, that's when your body doesn't let you sleep, right? Like, imagine you're lying down and you're like, okay, I need to sleep now. I need to sleep now so I can get 8 hours of sleep. I need to sleep right now. Do you think you're going to be able to sleep? No, your body's going to start stressing. You're going to be like, oh man, I can't sleep. I really need to sleep now so I can, do well on my exam. When you have to stress about getting a good night of sleep, your body will keep you awake, right? So actually stressing about getting a good night of sleep is counterintuitive. It'll actually keep you awake for longer. So actually the times when I have the worst sleep tend to be before exams, because that tends to be when I need to actually sleep well. So if you actually relax yourself and tell yourself like, hey, it's okay if I don't get a big night of sleep tonight, then counterintuitively, your body will actually make it easier for you to sleep. So that's the first tip. Don't stress too much about sleeping. One more thing on this. Some students are going to take this advice and they're going to say like,
oh, Penrose says that I can do an all-nighter before my exam, no problem.
That is not what I'm saying. Don't do an all-nighter. Some students All-nighters are dumb, okay? Don't do an all-nighter. You know, if you have to do an all-nighter, but don't use this tip as an excuse to do an all-nighter, you know? Don't be like, oh, Penrose said I can do an all-nighter. Don't be like that, okay? I'm not saying don't do an all-nighter, I'm not saying do an all-nighter, nor am I saying don't get any sleep. What I'm saying is don't stress too much about needing to get like a big sleep. You know, try your best. In my opinion, have a relaxed night the night before the exam and try to get a big sleep, but don't stress too much if you don't. That's the first tip. Second tip is kind of related. This is going to seem like a weird tip. Maybe you already know this, but this is going to be maybe controversial. Tip number 2, spam caffeine before your exam. So here's my pre-exam caffeine ritual. So I will take about an hour before the exam is when I'll have my first caffeine for the day. I will have like a shot of coffee, and then on the way to the exam, I will have like an energy drink, and then outside the exam venue, I will have another coffee. And in my pocket, I will have a packet of instant coffee just in case I need more caffeine. Now, I know this sounds like a ton of caffeine, a fuck ton of caffeine, and it is. So don't do this every single day. But caffeine is an amazing tool. You know, it's pretty controversial right now whether caffeine is good for you or bad for you. But it's pretty, you know, I would argue that if you need to perform really well, caffeine is an amazing tool to use. So before exams, that is when I spam caffeine. I saturate my blood with caffeine, right? So that's tip number 2. If you're not super familiar with caffeine, don't abuse this too much. But if you're pretty familiar with caffeine or you want to get used to it, before the exam is the perfect time to saturate your body with caffeine and reach like a really high level of caffeination. This is going to seem like a bit of a controversial, a bit of a weird tip, but hopefully this will help some of you guys. So that's the second tip, caffeine. Tip number three, what exactly do you do on the day of the exam? So I'm going to tell you how I kind of approach the exact day of the exam. So in my opinion, you should not study at all on the day of the exam, before the exam, because any study that you do before an exam will actually drain your focus a little bit, drain your willpower a little bit, drain your energy a little bit, which will affect your performance in the exam. And often the learning that you do before an exam is so close to the exam that you don't actually consolidate that learning very much. And often you're learning in like a stressful situation, right? So actually, I find that any kind of study, any kind of learning I do before the exam is pretty much useless. Like I might be able to get a tiny bit of knowledge, a tiny bit of improvement if I study on the day of the exam. But I find that it's pretty much useless because it just costs so much energy and so much focus that you could use towards the actual exam. So in my opinion, don't study at all on the day of the exam. So this is what I do. I take an oath to myself that once I go to bed the night before an exam, that's it. I'm done preparing for the exam. And here's the thing, if you make that agreement to yourself, if you promise to yourself that you will stop studying the night before any single exam, then you will actually finish your studying at that time. Because there's this thing called Parkinson's Law. Basically, Parkinson's Law says that if you give yourself a deadline, you will finish everything up to that deadline, right? So just pretend to yourself that your exam is actually a day earlier than it actually is. And you will get all your study done by then. That's called Parkinson's Law, right? So go watch my video, 3 study hacks, if you want to learn more about Parkinson's Law. And so what else do I do on the day of an exam? So first thing is, as soon as I wake up, I get sunlight. That's important for your mood, for your energy, to make you alert on the day of the exam and wake you up. Second thing I do is I have a chill day. So I'll go for a walk. I won't do any heavy exercise or anything. You know, I'll just kind of like get some sunlight, get some fresh air, go for a walk, do something chill, relaxed. Okay, and that brings me on to the 4th tip. It's to do with diet. Now you're gonna wanna skip this because you're gonna think like, oh, diet, that's lame, that's boring, I don't care what I eat. But this is super important. Most students don't realize that what they eat is literally destroying their performance in exams. Because here's a fact I learned from the scientist Andrew Huberman. Basically what he says is that 2/3 of people are affected negatively by carbs in terms of energy. So 2/3 of people, when they eat carbs or sugar, they experience this kind of crash in energy for a couple hours. This is because when your body is digesting carbs, it takes a lot of energy. So 2/3 of people, if they eat carbs, their focus is going to be lower, their energy is going to be lower, they're going to have brain fog. So imagine eating carbs before an exam. It's going to affect your focus and your performance in the exam. So this is tip number 4, watch your diet on the day of the exam. So me personally, I never eat carbs before the exam. That's the first thing. The second thing, and also learn what kind of foods affect your energy because different people are affected by different foods. For example, I'm lactose intolerant. So if I have milk, if I have yogurt, it's gonna make me feel like brain fog and kind of sick. So I don't have any dairy before an exam as well. And this is another bonus tip when it comes to eating. Me personally, if I have a morning exam, I will not eat before the exam. So go watch my video called like diet hacks when it comes to studying. But basically what I say in that video is that the highest amount of focus you will ever have in your day is right when you wake up. Because when you eat, your body takes a lot of energy to digest food. So when you've just woken up and you haven't eaten, your focus is going to be the highest it is all day, right? So this is another bonus tip. If you've got a morning exam, don't eat before your exam. But one thing I'll say on this, if you've never done this before, if you've never tried to study or focus before you've eaten, then don't try this on the day of the exam. I would recommend trialing this out for a week or two before you actually implement it in your exam. Because if you've never tried this before, it might affect you negatively. You might be like super hungry and you can't focus, right? So what I would recommend is look into this a bit. Go watch my video about diet and studying if you're interested in this. But not eating before your exam is an OP, amazing way to get insane laser focus. So me personally, even if my exam is like in the late afternoon, I will not eat before my exam. So that's the thing. Control your eating, don't eat too much, and be careful with carbs, because 2/3 of people are affected negatively in terms of energy and focus when they eat carbs. Like I remember there was this economics exam I did in high school. And basically I got an amazing night of sleep. I had an amazing morning and I was feeling so good for the exam. But I made the mistake of eating a bowl of pasta right before the exam. And my energy crashed, right? And so from that point on, I learned that food can affect your focus a lot. So yeah, hopefully that tip helped. Okay, so final tip I'll give you is de-stress yourself before the exam. If you're feeling kind of stressed, kind of nervous before your exam, one thing you can do is go to the exam with people who are like fun. Go with people who are feeling pretty good. So what I like to do is I like to go to the exam with people in my subject so we can kind of talk, have fun, chill before the exam, right? Another thing you can do to de-stress yourself and calm yourself, I learned this from the scientist Andrew Huberman. Basically, if you do this kind of breathing technique called the physiological sigh, it will instantly relax you. So if you're feeling stressed, activate this attack called the physiological sigh. So you can do it with me right now. I'll teach you exactly how to do it. So basically what you want to do is you want to take one big inhale through your nose, stop, take another inhale, and then exhale slowly. So I'm going to do it right now, okay? It's like this. So if you do that, do it like once or twice, it will relax you a ton. Like right now I'm feeling really relaxed for some reason because I just did it, I guess. So yeah, it'll really relax you. It'll make you feel good before the exam if you're feeling kind of stressed. Bust out 1 or 2 physiological sighs. So yeah, that's my whole pre-exam ritual. If you got an exam today or tomorrow, good luck. Let me know how it goes in the comments. Otherwise, if you're just watching this for fun, if you're watching this because you're procrastinating, then get the fuck back to work. See you boys later.